Well, it didn't come. There we go. There we go. We're having technical difficulty. This has been a very, very, very long day. I'm just going to go ahead and apologize. We're going to have all sorts of technical glitches on this stream, and there is not a whole lot I can do about it. We're changing things up. We're always trying to improve this live stream, and sometimes we make mistakes and we mess things up. For instance, we are 7 minutes late because we pulled the wrong input source and Ben wasn't actually on the call. And so we had to scramble and try to fix that.
We're actually an hour and 7 minutes late because Ben doesn't understand time zones.
Yeah, well, Ben doesn't usually know what time zone he's in. So I can understand it is a forgivable offense. I completely understand, but there's been a lot of talk on Twitter. We created a new segment that we call What You Bitching About on Twitter. See, I can't even bring up the graphic. We're just having what in the world? It's like, we
got this, man. We got this.
It's been one of those kind of Fridays. It really has. Like, the graphics not working. Like, I don't know what button to press. Like, I don't think I have focus on over there. So anyway, I'm going to get it started. But basically, this whole episode is one big what you been bitching about on Twitter, brought to you by MageMail. MageMail is the only email marketing automation solution that is built from the ground up to help you get more from your Magento store, and that's what we're all about here. So thank MageMail for sponsoring this bid. It pays for the alcohol, and anytime you can drink for free, that's a good thing. So this week, there's been an awful lot of bitching on Twitter. And, you know, some of it rightfully so, some of it maybe not so fair. But what we want to do is, this is a Magento community conversation. So what can we do to discuss those issues, specifically around the Magento Bug Bounty Program? There was maybe a little bit of a snafu from our Adobe overlords there. And, you know, it seemed to be quickly addressed, but we still wanted to talk about it. And we wanted to talk about kind of the state of the Magento community in general. And you know, this trend to kind of be a little more negative, you know, or assume the worst. And then, you know, if it's proven that that's not the case, that's fine. But maybe we can have a discord around, is there a better way of handling that? Can we be better as a community to not, you know, to make sure we're not being toxic? And obviously, feedback is important, and that's one of the things that makes this community so strong and so healthy, is that we provide feedback, Magento listens to that feedback, but, you know, is jumping to the worst possible conclusion and throwing it out there to the general public the best way of handling that. So I've got Ben Marks, I've got Talesh here, and we want to have that conversation. But first, I wanted, Talesh, if you would, kind of give everyone the rundown on the Bug Bounty Program and why that's important to Magento and the Magento community, why I try to figure out why none of my graphics are working.
Okay, cool. While you clear the cache on that.
See, I can't even change it to you now. You yell into the microphone so it switches. There you go. No.
Okay, there we go. It's still not on me, man. There we go. I'm going to yell.
Just yell into the microphone.
I'll yell into the microphone. Okay, so I'm not sure if you guys are seeing me. There are a couple definitions that we need to clarify before we even get into this discussion. There is a vulnerability disclosure program and a bug bounty program, and unless you know what these things are, this entire conversation doesn't make sense. What Magento had and still does is a bug bounty program, and before we get in any deeper, I think we need to recognize, and something that's not said enough, that a bug bounty program is one of the most advanced ways of protecting your software. It's putting your trust in the wide internet community, and this is an incentive to hackers or ethical hackers to try to break into the software and report it in an ethical manner to Magento for bug fixes and whatnot. And the thing is, most companies don't put out a bug bounty program unless they have the capability of responding to those requests. Responding to those bugs that have been coming in. And yeah, I think it's important before we even get into the discussion, we recognize the fact that what we're dealing with here is not Mickey Mouse type defense for the Magento platform. It is one of the more highly advanced highly advanced strategies you could do to protect a software and or website or anything. A vulnerability disclosure program, I would say, is a not really a superset, but if you're going to be having a bug bounty program, you should have some sort of vulnerability disclosure strategy. And you could have a vulnerability disclosure strategy without a bug program, but if you're going to have a bug bounty program, you definitely need a vulnerability disclosure. And I know there's standardized, or maybe the community is working on standardized ways to disclose vulnerabilities in software. So it does not, the vulnerability disclosure program is not incentivized like a bug bounty program. And I think it's important that we separate those two while we have this discussion. And before we go any further, everyone knows the difference between them. One's incentivized, but both of them have a standard way of disclosing potential vulnerabilities to Magento. I hope I didn't ramble on too much and lose everyone at the beginning.
But yeah, we're taking a nap at this point.
Yeah, I think it's really important if we're going to have this discussion, everyone's clear what we're talking about first.
Sure. It's always good. We like to define things here. People use, we tend to speak in our own language. We tend to have our own acronyms, and lots of people, lots of guests use acronyms. I don't even know what the hell they mean, so I definitely don't expect everyone that's watching this to know what they mean. So it's always good to start with a definition. So, Ben, what are your thoughts? Like, what is the importance, in particular, to Magento of the Bug Bounty Program?
So I'd say that Talesh gave a pretty good introduction, sort of the fundamentals, what the basis, sort of an industry-wide basis for for approaching the reality of the reality of software bugs, and the effect that has in a connected world, right? So we're being an e-commerce platform. We are a pretty big target for for people who want to figure out how to get into the stores, and usually for the purpose of skimming personal and credit card information. So I'd say, yeah, it's pretty much essential to our mission to make sure that we're doing everything we can to encourage healthy attitudes around people doing what they should do with open source software. I mean, one of the big advantages of open source software is that everything's out there for people to research and work with, improve. And a bug bounty program gives us a chance to engage, I guess, proactively and to reward good behavior. And also, I think from a business standpoint, it sends an important signal that, hey, we're really serious about making sure that we have that our platform is as secure as possible. So that's the kind of framework. I think that's the thinking that we have, and that's the framework that we operate in.
So what happened yesterday? Like, what was all of that? And for those that don't know, there was an uproar on Twitter that the Bug Bounty Program had been discontinued, and that Magento, that Adobe just canceled the whole program. And then there was a little bit of information came out, and a little more information came out. So fill us in, Ben, on exactly what actually happened yesterday.
All right. So it happened. So I think was I flying in from Poland? Yeah, in the last 48 hours or so, there's a really well-known security researcher in the Magento space, Willem de Groot. It's hard for me to do the Dutch, get that nice hard Dutch R out, but so G Willem on Twitter he's been an invaluable resource. Really came to my attention. I'd been familiar with Byte NL, Magento hosting platform in the Netherlands. And that was Willem's company previously. And back a couple of years ago, when the really bad RCE was discovered, that became known and branded as Shoplift. Willem's help was he was on vacation. I was at an air show, but he and I worked quite hard to make sure that we got messaging out. We relied on his efforts to really inform the community and get people to upgrade. It's one of the challenges of a platform like ours is we can't push security updates to people. But of course, a remote code execution vulnerability is a really, really bad deal. You've got to it essentially just means that someone can gain unrestricted access to your platform and do all sorts of nasty things. So Willem, just kind of giving that background, he was one of the people who noticed, who very quickly noticed that the bug bounty program itself was the public bug bounty program had been ended and then we had this replaced with this vulnerability disclosure platform, HackerOne, which is something that Adobe's been running for a very long. I guess they've had this program up and running for a while. So it wasn't that we completely just ended all efforts in this area, but there was a lack of communication around it, and that I think was kind of getting into this issue and teasing out what was happening. Is it's one thing to make a move like that, and there are some other details that I'll be happy to get into later. But I think what was really alarming to everyone is in this post Adobe having acquired this age of Adobe having acquired Magento recently, that having these kind of moves happen without any sort of heads up, it gives people some concern. So I can already see a question from Alex here in the chat. Why would someone like Adobe not want a bug bounty program? Well, and the thing is, there actually was there remained some bug bounty in place. There was actually some private, private engagement with some of our our prolific researchers to make sure that they still had some incentive to continue their work. And then of course there's also the feel good HackerOne credential, not credentialing, but you know what I mean, basically getting that kind of clout from finding and disclosing vulnerabilities. But again, the real big issue was that this didn't seem to, this kind of change probably should have been made a little more publicly so that people would understand the reasoning. And as it turns out now, we got the situation fixed, and I'll leave it there for us to get into.
So my first question is if you were keeping, if the thought was we would keep the bug bounty program, but only for those that maybe are actively engaged or, as you put it, or, they heavily influence your security research, wouldn't someone like Willem been involved in that? Like, wouldn't he have known?
Yeah, that was, so what I know is that there were a few people who were, I think, given the offer or who were going to be offered. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I mean, I would expect, because I think a few of the people that engaged on this thread on Twitter were people who have been our good researchers. So yeah, so I would expect them to be in the know about it. And actually, I should also offer a little more of a picture around it. Was in bringing overall Magento coming into Adobe has been, like, the transition has been pretty good, like in terms of the size of Magento. So you got this 800 person company being brought into this massive worldwide organization. And by and large, the transition has been really good. Adobe is an incredible company. In fact, we had all hands today, and we got, those of us at Magento got a lot more insight into some of the products that'll be product updates that'll be coming out soon. And it's a really inspiring company to work for, I have to say, just as Magento is. In that transition process, obviously they look at what is kind of they look at kind of the delta between the companies, like what exists at Magento and also exists at Adobe, and then where they can combine things, where we can use tools that Adobe's already using. I think that's it makes sense, right? Because you get some efficiency there. But so Adobe has been using HackerOne for a little while. And that, I think, is how this decision came, or this I'm not even sure if it was a decision. That's what happened. And that's the kind of thing, though, that we would have liked to have caught ahead and said, wait. Let's make sure that we actually want to do this. But I'd say we've had remarkably few of those kind of things. So that's good. But anyway, that's a little more background around it.
Yeah, and,
can I just, jump?
Go ahead. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to jump in here. HackerOne is generally regarded as a bigger, more mature bug bounty platform compared to BugCrowd. HackerOne does not only do vulnerability disclosure; they both do bug bounties, and HackerOne's a little bit bigger. So, from the inside, it could have sounded like, we're just changing platforms. But, the communication that came up a little bit was taken in a different sense.
Yeah, and my follow-up to that, Talesh, would be, and I want to start with you and get your opinion on how important it is to actually pay for those bugs as opposed to just giving an avenue for reporting them. And then, once we're finished with that, I want to get confirmation from Ben that they have reinstated paying for those on the new platform. So let's start with Talesh. How important is getting paid for submitting those security reports?
I think in general, in our case, actually, instead of in general, in our case with Magento, it's really bad when you are paying for something, then all of a sudden you say, I'm not going to pay for it anymore. That's just, that's rough on anybody. I wouldn't call it paying for bugs. I would call it incentivizing hackers to really crawl your system. Because here's the thing, the Magento security team, no doubt, is an amazing team, and they've been doing this in the last 3 years. And it just so happened that I was praising them on stage when this bug bounty shifting happened. They're a small team compared to the fact that there are thousands of people who are capable of testing the system on the internet. And if you incentivize these people to go at it, each of these individuals who currently contribute to the BugCrowd bug bounty, and whoever else has come in from the internet, they've developed skills. These are very complex skills, and they've developed skills and proficiencies in very nuanced ways. So this is why whenever there's a Magento security patch, there's multiple people listed, and they all have different proficiencies. So incentivizing them and gamifying the process would, one, not only create a stronger platform, but keep vulnerability hunters on our system. But also, and this is something that's not discussed as much, it'll keep them out of jail, because some of these guys just want to break stuff. I mean, it's guys just want to, and we by providing this sort of system, we keep them in on the right side of things.
All right, now Ben, can we get a confirmation? I know there was a post on Twitter, but can we get actual confirmation that Magento plans on continuing to incentivize in the bug bounty program?
Yes.
Extreme close up there. That was a simple answer. See, this is a long form type of content, okay? You're supposed to just drag that on forever and then say yes.
Actually, let's go back in 1837. The first software. It was
1941.
Yeah, 1941. The first bug. I was just testing you, Talesh. And this maybe can set up some later parts of the conversation here. We were once some of us found out about it, that this is what had happened. It was actually, by the time I very quickly fired off a note. I get like 2 or 3. Oh shit! I really better email Lavelle about this. I get maybe 2 or 3 of those a year. I try and be sensitive at this time, but it says a lot. Actually, they were already working on it, so that was good to know, right? So kind of as the community was finding out, our leaders were also aware. Again, I don't have full insight into the communications that we had internally around this, but once we were aware, we already had started moving to fix it. So I actually jumped in. I jumped in to kind of get the process going, to get this sorted, or at least to get us to be able to explain why the change and to apologize for the lack of communication. But it was already being fixed. But it's another example of how how important it is to have an engaged community, especially in it seems there's something special about, because there are many languages and different programming frameworks that have solid communities around them. But in the e-commerce world, it seems tremendously important to have this open dialogue with our community members, and to make sure that they feel like they can come to us, and that they even care to come and tell us these things. I mean, it would have been a really scary thing if we had just done this unilateral action without any communication and no one said anything. That would be a real sign of trouble in Magentoville.
So, but a lot of people's concern is that Magento was this small club, and it's obviously the number of employees was growing, but now it's part of this huge organization. And, does the left hand talk to the right hand? Do they make decisions based on, internal politics? Do they communicate with the Magento community, or not even the community, but maybe even people like yourself that are in community-facing roles before they make decisions that ultimately affect the community? And whether it is or whether it isn't, that definitely plays into people's fear right now as far as Adobe's going to change things and they don't care about the Magento community. So, are there policies that are being worked out? Are there kinks that are being worked out in that communication process? Or is this going to be something that maybe is a continued struggle?
Well, if I could predict the future, then maybe I would be CEO of a company. But I like I said earlier, I think we've enjoyed a pretty damn smooth transition. There are probably, might be a couple of little things that down the road we'll say, oh, that's a little different now, or we'll see maybe kind of some knock-on effects from some transitions that have happened. But by and large, I'd say we've enjoyed a really smooth transition process, and that is due to Herculean efforts on the part of both Magento and Adobe people. And I will stress again, just walking around. I actually about a month ago was in San Jose, the big San Jose office, walking around with my Magento shirt on, and got a lot of really, genuinely friendly smiles from people, and a couple people even came over and said, hey, welcome, you're part of a really good company. So this chat's pretty good. I'm probably blinking a little bit, but no, Adobe's been really good so far. They've been really receptive to the real magic ingredient behind Magento's success, and that of course is our community. Brad Rencher just addressed this. I'm gonna try and find the video right now. I'll drop a link in the chat. Brad Rencher. So we're the part of the organization that we came into is digital experience. So you have big Creative Cloud side. That's all the creation stuff, and then you've got like kind of document stuff, and then you've got the digital experience side, which is where Adobe's big analytics offering, our marketing offerings, where Magento sits. And now we sit under, so kind of like our head inside Adobe is a guy named Brad Rencher, who created a little company called Omniture. And I'm going to try and find this video. So hopefully that answers the question. I'm actually a little jet lagged today, and I can't seem to think straight.
Yeah, and I'll give you a second to look for that video. I don't know. I mean, if I had the editor here, we might even could plug it in and play it on the stream, but we could definitely post a link in the chat. Talesh, as you know, basically you're the community representative on this topic. From a community perspective, I know it's good or bad. You are the community representative, so you speak for everybody. Now, but as someone who possibly would participate in that bug bounty program, do you, as a community member, community members typically they feel some ownership toward the Magento platform, and sometimes maybe, I mean, that's not necessarily right, but it's what makes the community so strong. It also is sometimes what makes backlash to change so strong. So from your perspective, from the community side, what would you like to see Magento do to maybe get you, if we could rewind back a week, how would you have liked for Magento to handle this transition of the bug bounty program in regards to the community and the messaging, and in maybe engaging you a little more, the people that actively use this program?
I guess in general, what we've seen is they transition bug crowd to HackerOne. All around, everyone's agreed that it was not thought through deeply. I think that's the general consensus, that what we would have liked is like somebody should have realized. I feel like, my communication when it comes to security is just, maybe just a couple of weeks too late every single time. If there was awareness within Adobe of how important this bug bounty program and all the gigantic strides Magento has made in security over the last 3-4 years, if there was that awareness within Adobe, then it would have been approached with a little bit more thought, a little bit more engagement in the community. Personally, I am not opposed to moving a bug bounty program from bug crowd to HackerOne. I am opposed to just a bug bounty program disappearing overnight without any sort of communication, without, as we realized, Ben being fully aware of what's going on, because as he mentioned, he had to go back and speak to people in Magento. It's like, okay, let's figure out what's good, because these sort of things, I think, coming with Ben and Sherry fully informed as to what changes are happening and why, so they could answer the questions instead of me getting a little bit crazy on Twitter, is probably a better approach. I think like that alone would have made a million times more difference. Let's assume that they had made whatever oversights they've made leading up to the actual change in post on bugcrowd.com. I personally think the response from it should have been, okay, just give us 24 hours on what's going on. Instead, we kind of got like, we're working on it, which is, a little bit difficult to pin. It's like, well, you could be working on it for the next 6 months. and as far as most people are concerned, it's like, well, the bug bounty program's gone. So yeah, just maybe like a short timeline saying, look, in 24 hours we're gonna figure out exactly what got missed and why, and we'll get back to you guys. I think that's will go a long way towards just settling those perturbations that happen in Twitter with, it just, Twitter, YouTube is like a factory that just generates outrage. So just to settle that outrage, those things would have definitely helped.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Twitter outrage here in a minute toward the end of this stream. I want to get into just kind of how things operate on Twitter in general. We've got a nice stream going. We've got an active chat. Please, if you have any questions, anything in particular you want us to touch on, then feel free to post it in the chat. We've got people watching. We're streaming live right now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Periscope Twitter. We've got people watching on all of those platforms. We've got Vikrit watching, saying, hey, Talesh on Facebook. Thank you for watching on Facebook. Let's see, Mark Lewis had a question here, and I'll pass this one to Ben. Mark, I hope everything's going well with you. And he said, can you speak to Matt Assis? I think I got that right. I have no idea how A-S-A-Y. AC? Is that it?
Yeah, he's like ACDC. He says just like ACDC.
I'm still not even sure how it's spelled that way and said that way. I'm from the South. We draw it out. But Matt Acey, can you speak to Matt Acey's involvement in the Magento community?
Sure. And hey, Big Crime, it's been a while. And hey, Mark Lewis. Do hope things are going okay for you. So Matt was the one. He kind of came out. Matt's a really cool guy. I'm really. I think we were all of us in the Magento world were relieved to discover that he's a quantity over inside Adobe. And he kind of became known to us by just jumping in as soon as the announcement was made. So before the closing, you can imagine. So that we announced the deal. Then there's this period of due diligence and regulatory, this and that. And during that time, there was very, very clear communication from Magento, from Adobe, like, hey, don't talk about anything. Like, you don't want to be the person who says the wrong thing and ruins this deal. Not that I think that even I probably could not have done something like that. But Matt, man, he just jumped right into it and answered a lot of the concerns. And these were concerns that even I had as well. Cause like, what does Adobe know about open source? And the fact that Matt's been there for 4 years in the Salt Lake City office. Matt's background is robustly in open source world. He's a bit of a thought leader on it. He writes regularly, posts articles about kind of relate, in software, but especially focused around things going on in the open source world. And Matt is a good colleague for me to have. So he and I talk pretty regularly, and also with Sherry. Now there's a whole developer relations team. And a lot of people in Adobe working in and for kind of open source, and a lot of that has to do with Matt. And I think there's another I want to say another one of his leaders. Is it Stephen Gill? No, Stephen Gill's on the team. Bill Staples. Bill Staples, I think, is the name. Anyway, so there's a whole group of people there that are really at Adobe that really focus on engaging their community and also have this focus on open source and contribution. And in that regard, right now we're working closely, I'd say pretty closely with Matt. He's in demand as a speaker at the Magento community events, and how we fit together. That's one of those longer transitional questions to be answered. So right now, I mean, Sherry and I are still part of strategy growth team at inside the Magento umbrella. And Matt is still kind of on the Adobe side of the house. I mean, hopefully over the next several months, it'll start to be a little bit less us and them, and this side and that side. But Matt is a great person for us to bounce ideas off of, and he is ecstatic about the Magento acquisition because he loves open source, and having the kind of community that Magento came with was a big plus. I mean, other companies out there, they work super hard to even get a community kind of going and interconnected, and we obviously are very connected.
Yeah, it was nice to see. I think it alleviated a lot of those early concerns to just see him jump right in with both feet. So it was nice to see that. By the way, again, we're streaming on a lot of different services. If you happen to be catching this on anything but YouTube, the conversation is happening over on YouTube, youtube.com/ecommerceaholic. While you're over there, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. You're here. You might as well. You like this. Why not subscribe so you'll get notified? In the description of this video is the Insider Club, which we're really lazy about and not doing anything with. But if you just want your email address on another list, go ahead. It's down there. You might as well. Give us a thumbs up on the video. That really helps as well. Help us spread the word. That's all we ask. We're not charging anything to anybody except for Magento. They're the only people that are paying for any of this nonsense. Right, and I've got my graphics working, so I wanted to make sure I show the logo. That's part of the agreement. I didn't get to show that earlier because we were having graphics problems, but I'm going to click it twice now. Brought to you by Magento. They're the only ones that pay. Least you could do is help spread the word on social media. We've got Max Pronko in the chat here. Thanks, Max, for showing up. I still want to get you on the stream. You never replied to my reach out to try to have you on the stream, so. Let's make that work. If you have any questions, go ahead.
TJ, did you notice that it looks like Talesh is having Wi-Fi issues?
I think he's on. His Wi-Fi is garbage, so he can't pull up the chat and chat at the same time. But the thing is I've got me who's just here in Alabama, and then these international travelers that just stay gone all the time. And so I feel bad because I'm going to finish this and I'm going to go home. Now, it's going to be busy. I actually sold my house. We closed Friday. So I have 6 days. Thank you. Let's not congrats yet. I still feel like the house is going to fall apart before next Friday. But I've got 6 days to move. Yeah, my furniture is probably the only thing holding the house in place. That's what I'm going to find out. But that's what I do. But I get to go home, and you guys are stuck in all of these terrible locations like Prague and Oregon, and I feel bad because you're not here in beautiful Opelika. You're having to deal with the consequences of all that travel.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
Are you in your hotel room?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in my Airbnb, so I don't need to go anywhere after this.
What do you mean?
Yeah, we don't have to go home. He's got to go home.
I think he's being sarcastic. I think that's what it is. I think Talesh is not real good at the sarcasm, apparently, is what that taught me, if we learned anything.
I'll be off to Sweden after this. We're meet Magento, Sweden.
All right, so we've got another comment here, and then I wanted to talk about just like the Twitter storm in general. Steve Robbins in the chat here. Steve mentions, any comment on the M1 end of life in 2020? I imagine there will still be M1 sites after that. Will people get to keep their EE stores? And I'll touch on this a little bit. I mean, and we talked about it some in the last stream, and we probably need to do some more polished videos. I know eCommerce Forest, Rebecca Brockton just did one. If you're in the Magento community and you're not subscribed to eCommerce Forest, then you probably should go check that out. But as far as, M2 end of life, I think Magento whether intentionally or unintentionally, did everybody a favor by throwing out the deadline that everyone thought was kind of short and panicked, and then fairly immediately dialing it back. Not completely dissimilar from the situation we had with the Bug Bounty program. But I think it put everybody on their toes, and a lot of people started making decisions to look toward Magento 2 and migrate. And obviously, it hasn't been the right decision for everyone at this point. If you recently launched, if you just invested a bunch of money into your Magento 1 site, or if it's just doing the job, like if you're just happy with it, then maybe you haven't migrated yet. The thing is you've got what is it, a year and a half, or a little over a year and a half to actually make that migration. So, it's one of those situations where that's far enough out in the future to give everybody time, but not too far out in the future to where you don't feel any urgency to actually get moving. It takes time to do it. My concern is more from an agency perspective, in that a lot of the reputable agencies in the Magento space may be overwhelmed by the flood of inquiries, and they're going to book up. And so if obviously a lot of people are trying to decide, if Magento 2 is the right platform for them. And if you make that decision that it is the right platform, well, I feel like it's better to move early so you have your choice of hosting partners, and we don't have this sudden flood at the end. But I'll let that's about. I mean, I could speak in more detail if you have particular questions, but from an EE perspective, Ben, how do you see this playing out?
All right. So let's go back. Let's do a little bit of history, though. A little history lesson. So we've got another 2 hours. As
long as you want to go, man. As long as you want to go. And we need to get Talesh involved. I feel like we're neglecting Talesh a little bit. I'll get you.
Let's throw it. Well, we can throw it over him. I mean, I'll set the background though. We released Magento 2015, November 2015. We said, hey, everyone, you got 3 years. Essentially, because we've been saying that actually before then. Said, once we release Magento 2, that's going to start the clock on Magento 1 EOL. And in that time, I'd say, the 3 years after that, Magento 2 product has continued to mature. It's a challenge because Magento 1, after 10 years of being around, is a nice, mature, stable platform for everybody. And then we said, okay, we'll continue support, and we gave throughout a timeline that a lot of people, I guess, didn't like, so we quickly walked that one back, and then we had made the decision. Actually, the deadline that we've announced, so that's June 2020, as the Magento 1 end of life. That puts us in that gives us a lot of responsibility, because we have we have multiple PHP end of life. We have some supporting framework end of life in there. So we have kind of an increased scope of coverage to support that. But we knew like giving people 18 months or more was going to be the right move. We did know that we actually did have this decision made, and Sherry and I are often involved in these discussions, and we were this time as well. But then with the Adobe acquisition, that delayed the announcement a little bit. But even still, by the time we got it out, there was more than 18 months notice. And the reality is, so to answer, Steve, your question, I think probably the most significant part of to your point, yes, there will still be people running M1 stores. I mean, there are still people running like Magento 1.3. What can we do? The enterprise answer, I can't give, just because it's not that's not my policy to cover. My guess, so I will give a guess, and I would guess that once the end of life comes, like people will have to move over to Magento 2, or they would be using Magento 1, kind of not in compliance with the license, right? But that's my guess, right? So I can't say that for sure. Although I guess another way to think about it is if you have an enterprise business, you're running enterprise paid software for Magento. I'm going to guess that those merchants don't want the risk involved in being on an unsupported platform. And yes, I am in USA for another 24 hours or so.
So Talesh, what are your thoughts around the end of life, and maybe any concerns around that deadline?
You're still looking at a major risk in that no security patches are coming out after June 2020. Who knows? Someone's on a 0 day waiting for June 2020 to roll around and say, well, Shoplift 2.0 or something like that. What I think is going to happen is very quickly after June 2020, all those little stores that are running Magento 1 will quickly be changed to something else, be it Magento 2 or one of the other Mickey Mouse platforms out there for smaller merchants. I don't see any responsible merchant, running a platform that is at that much risk where you have zero support at this point. I know there's people out there still running Magento 1.3 and 1.4. They're patching it and they're maintaining it themselves. And if that's what they want to continue doing, they're just going to be taking on more and more work. And I don't see why merchants want to spend more and more money on a platform that, all intents and purposes, is gone the way of the dinosaur. And I can't really speak to enterprise. It's my hope, the businesses on Enterprise Edition, or Magento Commerce is called now. It's my hope that they have a greater investment in their stores, and they see the use in moving to a supported platform. However, I've worked with Magento 1.4 stores as late as 2 or 3 years ago. So I do know the crazy long timelines of some big enterprise builds. The last store that I worked on was part of a gigantic 7-year project. So in 7 years, in much bigger pieces of software than Magento. Magento was a small piece. But the fact of the matter is, when they had mentioned eCommerce 7 years ago, no one was talking, Magento 2 back then. So it is understandable that some merchants kind of, don't have the developments to move to Magento 2, but hopefully they're big enough to handle the maintenance and support of that by themselves going forward.
Absolutely. We have a question here in the chat from Chris Manger. Thanks for watching here, Chris. And Chris talks about the market share of Magento and is curious as to whether Adobe might be willing, again, this is speculation, but Adobe might be willing to apply Magento in a different way or update it to gain a larger slice of the e-commerce space. So, the speculation is, will Adobe make changes? Magento obviously has, some technical complexity. It's a very flexible e-commerce platform. I'd argue the most flexible e-commerce platform in the world. So you can do anything you want to do on it, but with that flexibility comes some complexity. And so, do you see Adobe trying to take Magento into a route where maybe it's easier for people to get on board so that they might be able to widen that market share? Any thoughts? So we'll start with you, Ben.
Yeah, well, obviously we want my thoughts on e-commerce platforms and market share. We focus on making Magento a broadly applicable solution, and what I mean is just as a platform, it fits in a lot of use cases, right? So it can be part of some small businesses, all the way up to top businesses in the world. It's an interesting place to be. There are not a lot of platforms that I think can attest, that are suitable in that way in so many places. But I would love to see us, continue to gain, to gain market share, be present in, more verticals. Magento's done really well in business. We've been profitable pretty much forever, even when we were part of eBay. So we have demonstrated success. Now, what I think is going to be interesting in the future, if you look at, you hear our messaging about kind of being a cloud first company. That was messaging we had even before the Adobe announcement, right? So we want to be this one stop solution where whatever the scope of work you're doing in Magento, whether you're running a store or you're building a store, that you've got a good set of tools around that, right? And we're your vendor for that. Which is not to say that we don't have the focus on open source, because the open source part of our part of the company is actually what gives us a lot of strength, especially if you look at the work that like Maxi Katerienko and the community engineering team are doing, enabling our community to build some really sweet features, huge features, and also make sure that we're crushing through bugs and issues. But getting to a point where we are operationally like just absolutely killing it with our cloud approach and how well that fits, even more broadly across the market. I mean, we recently introduced a starter package for cloud that has I think pretty decent price point. I mean, if you look at what you get functionally and then compare that to any other platform, it's really it's quite a value. Where I think we're going to benefit a lot from Adobe is they're very, very good at infrastructure. And we've recently made some strong hires. I was just speaking in Argentina last week at Magento Argentina, and one of my colleagues, Samir, was there, and he's a product manager on cloud but he came in. So we have product manager on cloud who's really good at the software side of things. We have a product manager on cloud now who is great with infrastructure. And these kind of investments that we make as a company, and then the institutional knowledge that we have as part of Adobe is going to be, that's going to be a really killer combination. So I think our sweet spot is going to be continuing to build that out. Yeah. So, and I guess I can leave that there for now.
Yeah. So, Ben's not in a position to just speculate wildly. Talesh and I, on the other hand, can do all sorts of fun speculation, right? Like we could guess, we could be wrong. This is one thing. I'm taking the Gary V approach, and if you don't know who Gary V is, Google it, as long as you don't mind curse words. But the Gary V approach of just say a bunch of stuff on video, sooner or later, a portion of it's going to be true, and you could just replay those videos and say, look, dozens of years ago, I really knew what was going on. So, Talesh, let's get your opinion. Where do you think Adobe is going to take Magento? Are we going to go up market? We're going to go down market? We're going to try to go both ways? How do you see Adobe changing Magento in the short-term or long-term future?
Here's the thing, and again, pure speculation. This is actually lots of fun, especially because Ben's on this call. When it comes, I'm assuming the question is like, are we going to see Magento move down market and to combat like Shopify and that sort of SaaS model of turnkey e-commerce? I think as I'm very similar as answer to Ben that that starter package and cloud is going to be Magento Cloud is going to be closest you're going to get. As for modifying the rest of the Magento offering, Magento Commerce or Magento Open Source, to make it a little bit more turnkey or a little bit easier to to run as a small business. I don't think that is any sort. I don't think any of those products are going to go in that direction. For the very simple reason is that how many of you guys out there knew about this Adobe Digital Experience part of the Adobe with the Magento acquisition took place, or before you learned that Magento was going to be part of Adobe. This thing focuses on very big business, and if you were running EE for some very large clients, probably you are very aware of what they do. But I think for the vast majority of the Magento community, they didn't expect that Magento would be folded into that, because I did, field a lot of questions about Adobe, the guys who make Photoshop, but no, it's there's a lot more to Adobe, and I don't think Adobe has any sort of reason to I'd call it, for what I think it is, dumbing down Magento 2 in something that's simpler, and I don't think they should. I don't want them to.
Well, this is what I see, and this is a guess. Again, complete and total wild, utter speculation. And if I'm wrong, somebody please call me out on it in the future. But this is what Adobe is going to do. We're going to see them go more cloud. They're going to push more infrastructure into cloud. We're going to see the cost of the cloud license go down. The cloud starter is going to maybe move a little bit further down market. They're going to start modularizing a lot of the functionality, and you can get the license, and then you start paying a fee for the functionality. And that way, even open source customers that just want the Bluefoot, well, they can just get a Bluefoot add-on. Or if you just want, B2B functionality, you can pay a little more for the B2B add-on to just the open source version of the platform. And it's not going to be so much all or nothing. We're going to see them start. You can get all for cheaper, just like I can pay $50 a month and I can get the entire Creative Suite, or I can pay $30 a month for Photoshop. It's kind of going to be the same thing for Magento, obviously on a different scale. That's going to be my guess, but that is no inside information whatsoever. So if Adobe is actually making those plans right now, don't call me. Nobody told me. I'm just guessing here.
I'd say it's a pretty good guess, TJ. I mean, that certainly sounds plausible, and I won't disagree with it. I mean, of course, I can make these comments because I too am not, I'm not really party to these decisions or directions just yet. But yeah, there's no doubt that we have. Again, I think for me the big thing to underscore is that Adobe's really good, not just at infrastructure itself, but also they're really demonstrated successful company, but they're also really strong technical company. So being a product company, and I think there's tons we already are learning from them, and will continue. That'll continue over the next couple of years. But in the meantime, you do have this reality that Magento 2. There are a lot of, when I joined Magento in 2014, they had just done a survey that said they just done a survey of the ecosystem and of store owners, and 60% of these small office, home office, the really kind of super small stores, 60% of them, the person whose store it was, the retailer, had also done a good bit of the implementation work. They maybe they knew a little bit of coding, and they were able to kind of fumble along and get extensions in place and get themes done and make some tweaks here and there. Magento 2 right now doesn't. I don't think it addresses that end as nearly as well anymore, because it is a much more technical. It's a good bit more technical product, right? I kind of lament that. I don't know that we ever really talk about it too much. I'm not sure that it was even an active plan. But the reality is also that there should be some kind of gate. I mean, if you're standing up an e-commerce store, you need to look after the care and feeding of that e-commerce store, right? So you really need to be a diligent, disciplined owner and maintainer. The shoplift example was a perfect example of maybe maybe a lot of people have been given or taken on way too much responsibility with this application because they weren't keeping their sites up to date. We probably could have seen that coming and more proactively addressed that instead of the sort of reactionary response. But again, with the diligent efforts of people like Willem, the outcome of which was Mageport.
Yes. Yeah.
So my question would be, the side effect of that, if we've raised the barrier to entry, obviously there's a certain level of sophistication that even though you may not require that sophistication on Magento 1, you probably need to have that technical sophistication to be able to properly maintain the product. So if we've raised the barrier to entry, the question is, and this is for you, Talesh, how does that affect the Magento community long term, in that how many of the certified Magento or active Magento developers now became Magento developers because some local merchant told them they wanted to use Magento and then they had to figure it out. And if that barrier to entry is higher, then maybe that never happens, and so that developer never grows into a Magento developer. What are your thoughts, Talesh?
Like you, I've been doing Magento for a long time, and we've both entered this space where things were a lot simpler, as Ben said, and sometimes we took on more than we should have. But in that 10 years, we've seen a significant evolution to the complexity and the type of developers who were involved in Magento, just within the Magento 1. And I think that evolution is a little bit faster now that we have Magento 2. We have a change in the developer demographic now happening a little bit, but I don't think the Magento 1 guys are going to go away, because there's still a lot that they're familiar with in the platform that is may not be as effective with Magento 2. And there was an interesting statistic from our friends across at Inshu where they found that throwing brand new developers at Magento 2 provided way faster embeds that were deliverable to a client compared to taking a Magento 1 developer and moving them onto a Magento 2 project. So there is something to be said from learning Magento 2 greenfield and also transitioning from Magento 1 to Magento 2. There's benefits to both, but I don't think we're going to see a massive fading Magento 1 level or agencies. I think the evolution will happen, and it'll happen. It's been happening too slowly, and it's going to ramp up really quickly. That's unless my one last speculation, Adobe puts Photoshop that says launch Magento Store. Then things may get a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, that's actually so. I mean, one of the things that I find inspiring is, well, there are many things that are inspiring about Adobe. I mean, it's rare. I think it's rare that you're in a sort of a company corporate all hands and just absolutely just shaking your head with pride and just amazement at what our now coworkers are creating all across the Adobe family. Adobe has some really, especially the creative suite. Those products are, I haven't had to break out Photoshop for anything other than like meme creation in years. And really, it's been since having Photoshop so I could slice up a PSD into web assets. But I think we've got some real opportunity here as a company to get super innovative and tie the creative side over to the digital experience side even more closely. You've got products like Experience Designer, so Adobe XD, and then some other content creation tools and that kind of fits in where I could see someone creating, like if you go over to Behance, which is I've said this a couple times recently. There's this entire creative community called Behance, like 10 million users. You go over to Behance. I just jumped over there once I found out that this was an Adobe thing, and they were having a live stream of like people up on a stage, and they're sort of like green screened, creating an entire like logo set for some Emirates program, but you're actually watching them use the Adobe tools to kind of learn how they approach their work. And so it's a great way to showcase what the tools can do, and then it's also people are getting tons of value out of it. It's sort of like a it reminds me of the benefit of a hackathon, right? Where you're not just there to create functionality, you also get to learn from your fellow developers. I've started thinking back to when I was, when I actually worked for a living, and how one of the things, so in all the time, I started Magento work in 2008, and in all that time, I was at Blue Acorn. It was never a single day that I woke up and thought, oh, shit, I got to go to work. And I think part of that was because it was such a creational thing. Like I enjoy creating. I'm an artist. I'm an artist at heart. I went to like the governor's school for art in North Carolina, and yeah, I don't know. I don't really create art much anymore, but between my drumming and my job, I don't really have much time. But it's what we do is such a creative act, and I mean it runs from creativity all the way over into real heady engineering stuff. But there is a lot of that pure creational joy in the e-commerce customization world. So I can see us actually getting to the point with some of these tools where, I think we should have our front end in such a state that that you actually could give people some basic templates and guidelines for what needs to be created, and then you could say go into Behance and have people say, hey, I'm a retailer, I want a Magento store. Here are my thoughts, and then have people in this space create, essentially design sites, and then but because we have the tooling built, you essentially could push the button and generate the assets. Now we've got some product work to get there, both on the Adobe side and on the Magento side, but that would be really fascinating for me to see. Yeah, and then I know some other questions popping up in here.
Yeah, we've got a few. If there's any in particular that you want to make sure you jump on, I think most of them are comments at this point. And one thing I wanted to touch on before we get into the Magento community in general and how we might handle that better. Do you know how your place is doing there in South Carolina, man? How's it going?
Well, last I heard from people in the neighborhood, so we live like right on the coast, about 100 meters from the beach. We're upstairs in a house, and we're actually on a relatively high spot on this like 10-kilometer long island. Using metric there for my international audience. As far as I know, the bar where I worked, it's about 4 blocks away. I mean, people were still out on the patio having an extended hurricane party. So that should be fine. I mean, I imagine we're gonna get dumped on with rain, but as long as the winds don't kick up over much over 60 miles an hour, I expect the old house will be standing when I get back in November.
Great, that's good to hear. Good to hear, and it looks like it's not as bad as it could have been. The storm seemed to have weakened, so hopefully that trend continues. So the last thing, and we've been streaming for a little over an hour now. Usually when I book guests, I say we're going to go for an hour, and then we'll go longer if questions persist or if the conversation's good. So whether we keep going after this point is up to you. So post if you have questions, if you have something you want us to talk about. It's not often that I get Ben and Talesh on the live stream. So if you have something you want their opinion of, then please post it. Let me know, and we will get to it, and I will keep them here forever. I mean, it's still morning for Ben, but it's like getting close to party time for Talesh. So, we'll go for a little while longer. Please post your questions. Again, I'm going to start with Talesh on this. Talesh, the community in general is tending to, at least when I say community, let me make sure, again, define. When I say community, I mean the Magento people I follow on Twitter. That's what I mean by it, right? So that's the definition of community in this context. Is the people on Twitter. And I honestly hate social media. I don't like it at all. I don't like Facebook. I don't like Instagram. I don't like Twitter. I only do it because there are people there I want to interact with. That's probably most of us to a certain degree. But honestly, if I didn't have an agency, if I didn't have this job, if I weren't doing Magento, I probably wouldn't even have social media accounts. So I tend to try to keep things, I tend to be optimistic. As much as I possibly can, and I try to keep things in a positive tone, and I try to avoid things that are negative with no reason to back up the negativity. And so with that, maybe let's explore what we think we could do better. Right now on Twitter, if something comes out negative about Magento, everyone assumes the worst and jumps on that. When I say everyone, someone assumes the worst, and it's a various part. I'm not blaming any one person in particular, but someone assumes the worst, and then everyone reacts to that assume the worst post, and it's a bunch of it's different people each time, and hell, it may be me sometimes. I don't know, but I'm just saying something negative comes out, someone assumes the worst, and then everyone piles on, and so I've been doing Magento about as long as Magento's been doing Magento, but I've really only been plugged into the community for about 3 years now. So post eBay days have I been plugged into the community. So this is a bit new for me. I didn't see this, or at least I wasn't as sensitive to it, before the Adobe acquisition, and it seems to have kind of turned a negative tone, I guess. And people are concerned. I get it. It's fine. But as a community, Talesh, how could we handle this differently? Like, is there a better way to provide that feedback to Magento? Should we do it in the Slack channel? There's quite a few Magento Slack channels. Like, what could we as a community do better because we want that feedback. I want, when Magento steps out of line or Adobe steps out of line, I want us to react. But I'm also concerned that if the tone goes negative, people either check out, don't want to be a part of that, or that can be used as ammunition against the platform as a whole, even if it's not accurate. Like a quote or a tweet out of context can be used in a negative fashion to sell against the platform. So how could we as a community, do you have any ideas around how we could be a better community while also keeping the mothership in line?
Oh boy. So basically stop me when you want me to stop speaking, okay? Just interrupt, because I'm not going to stop on this.
Wait, how many times have I kicked you out of the community, Talesh?
4. You just said 4. We only had 4 right now. But, I mean, I don't speak about this often because I think there are other people in the Magento community, and we also have Sherry and Ben, who is better that their efforts and their energy be poured into that. But I do think about it a lot. We have multiple problems. Jesus, which one to start with? Let's take the most recent example. Let's just start with that one, because I was dead center in the middle of that, kicking a fuss, throwing a tantrum. It was my baby. It's Magento security from a community point of view. It's on my Twitter. It's self-imposed. This is my baby. I jumped at that, and I kept on trying my best to stop tweeting about it, but then invariably replies will keep on coming. And then, as I said, Twitter is a little bit of outrage machine, and we've kind of got conditioned to that. And what I think helped me to just stop being angry about it was just remembering that I have a microscope view on what my issue is. And I think this is a problem for a lot of people in Magento, because they have this very narrow microscope view of this one little thing that's annoying them, and they will rain fire, hellstone and brimstone on fire because of that. And I had to stop and rewind. It's like, okay, yes, this bug bounty thing is important. It's significantly important. But I had to step back and remember, we're dealing with a gigantic company called Adobe, who's doing a million things and who's trying to integrate 1,000 things between themselves and Magento, but also they're trying to integrate a lot of complex business processes. And Magento itself is not a simple product. It's a very complex piece of software. So you just got to step back and say, okay, none of these things are going to be running smoothly. And I think a lot of times we see it and just like this circling the negative feedback on Twitter. It's by a few people who are just stuck in this microscope view of this one little thing that's really important to them about the Magento ecosystem, and it's so important, but they can't step back and say, okay, where does this fit into the whole big picture of everything that's going on? And I think that's the big thing that happened in the last week, where I personally found it really difficult to let go of the fact that Magento is pulling the one thing that, and I think also I was a little bit in us versus them mood, because I just did this amazing presentation that it was all about fighting hackers and whatnot, so it was just all red blue fighting teams. So yeah, I was like, why is Magento removing the one defense that works so well for us? But again, I had my little microscope view of what was going on, and I just let it. Yeah, I took that to the large audience of Twitter and just let it rip. Mind you, I did have a little bit of foresight to not drag Matt AC into it right away. But I wasn't happy with the fact that everyone's telling me to wait. So I'm like, wait for what? So I think that's one big failing, and that's a significant failing of myself. That I when it comes to security, I'm just I've got my blinders on, and I don't see the big picture. I don't see the trees for the forest, or the forest for the trees. The second big thing I think we have in the Magento community when it comes to this sort of negative feedback and just these tantrums that are thrown online, it's we've been spoiled. Straight up, we've been spoiled. We've had access to Magento employees and this good communication, and some people just have a sense of entitlement. They think if they've worked in the community or they contributed for a significant amount of time, Magento owes them something. But at the end of the day, we have to remember, as much as we work together and there's co-opetition, there's still businesses to be run, and I think we lose sight of that a little too easily, and we let our sense of entitlement let us say things about Magento that probably if we had step back and take a look, then it probably wasn't necessary to go after Magento. So those are my two big things that I see us going down the wrong path in the way we interact with Magento especially on Twitter.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this a little bit before we kick it to Ben for his opinion. The thing is that it worked, right? Bug bounty problem, outrage on Twitter, 24 hours later, bug bounty problem solved, right? So that worked. And if it's working, then is there a problem? I don't know. Karen.
But here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing. Ben said as soon as it was out, there was communication all the way up. I think this bug bounty thing would have been sorted out without the outrage. And I may be wrong, but
no, I agree.
In reflection, I think, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying, that's at least public perception, right? We saw a problem, we addressed problem in a blunt way, problem solved. Whether it was going to get solved or not, that honestly, that's speculation. I think it would have. I think it was headed that way. I don't see that as a big problem. But I wanted to touch on Karen Baker's comment here. And Karen, thanks for watching. I'm going to be out in Austin, Texas. We should get together. But Karen mentions that that we sell Magento. Like, our livelihood depends on this platform, and as a business, having all your eggs in one basket is never a good idea, and that's something we have to address as a business. But we sell this platform, and the health and the growth of this platform is good for us. And so obviously it's a concern for us when someone raises problems. And I am not someone that says we should not address problems or raise problems. I'm completely on board with, if they do something that we feel like is not right, that we go right to it. And I do appreciate how a lot of people in this community, Karen as probably the leader of that group, go right at any issues they see from Magento. I completely wholeheartedly appreciate that, because I think we all benefit from having those leaders speak up. My concern is, should we do it in an online public forum that quotes and tweets and conversations can be pulled out of context? I have no problem with issues being addressed. I'm also not someone that wants to write the sales copy for a SaaS platform. So, with that in mind, Ben, from your perspective, how could we be a better community?
Wow, that's I think that's the, how can help me help you? Interesting question, TJ. Actually, I don't know that I've ever thought of it that way. I mean, so it goes without saying, I mean, the people in the community should always feel like, they are respected and heard. I mean, I guess actually a good way to show respect is to listen, be present and listen. And I think Magento does that pretty well. And it's Sherry and I have a lot of FaceTime, and Magento's put a lot of effort into having us available out in the world. And more recently, we have the community engineering team out there. And there's a lot more employees showing up in a lot more places. I think it's great because, one, I think people were just, I'm a nice guy, but I'm pretty sure people were getting tired of seeing me. But it's really important to have our team present, I think, just in person with the community, so that they can, hear the concerns, but also to feel the engagement, feel that passion. It's something that keeps me going. And I think I see that effect happen for the people that are out there, right? So being present with each other is essential. Now, Matt AC, on this thread, I mean, he said something. He informed my judgment, or my assessment of the situation, by saying something along the lines of, we really need to get to a place where people don't assume the worst, right? I can't find the tweet right now, but anyway, it's in his timeline. It's just in a reply, I think, somewhere. But he, and I hadn't really thought of it that way, but it is balance, right? I mean, I think if you feel something's really important, you should always be able to reach out to someone at Magento and get a very quick response. And it's important, I think, for people to see us addressing things in public, but it also can be a little counterproductive if we're having to jump on everything, essentially turning a lot of situations into a little bit of damage control that maybe they didn't need to be. But usually if people are expressing frustration, something like that, it's because they see something happening that they don't care about, and it becomes important enough for them to speak to. So for me, I've seen this community be fairly self-regulating, and remain engaged and interactive with each other. So it's a good place to be in. But probably it's a bit of advice that I was given a long time ago, and that's just to maybe before sending out something out there that might be a little bit caustic, take a second, take that extra breath. I myself, I'm a bit self-editing, right? Obviously, I have to maintain a fairly clean and focused Twitter timeline, like social media presence, and I have to stop and consider broader company positions, a very diverse world of people that we're interacting with whenever I'm doing stuff, and I am certainly I regularly start to type things and then just say, yeah, no, maybe I'll just hold off on that. Like it's a joke that doesn't need to be made. It's a statement that doesn't need to be made, or a statement that might need a little bit of adjustment, right? Because there's enough like vitriol and stuff like that online. Don't need to contribute to it. I don't always live up to that, but that's my approach. And I'd encourage others just to think the same way. And if you feel strongly about something, and you want to express that frustration, you need to understand that very often that's actually two things that you're trying to do at once, and that can be counterproductive, right? So if you need to say, hey, I'm pissed, that's good. Say I'm pissed, and then say, I would like this to change. When you put those two things together, when you confuse your purpose, then it's less effective. It's less productive, right? I think I learned that raising a teenager, right? That was often my advice to him, was just like, okay, I get that you're upset. Be upset, and then let's work on what the actual issue is. And that usually deflates things and gets things very quickly. So that would be my I guess my only real advice. I'm probably missing a huge opportunity to affect massive change. But yeah.
Well, that was good advice. Anything to add to that, Talesh?
I think just maybe a third thing to add to that is we should highlight when Magento listens. I mean, yeah, we moan and whine and throw tantrums a lot, but not much people turn around and say, "Hey, look, you know what? They listened," or you know what? They've fixed whatever wrong that was ailing me. And I think we don't highlight enough of that.
That's something actually I have been meaning to say for a little while. So there are a lot of things that we do and don't do that are very well thought through and informed and dialogued about before they come to light. I mean, just this morning, I woke up to an email announcing some things around Magento U. Some changes that were going to be coming, very, very soon. And I said, okay, actually, no, this is a really bad idea. Unfortunately, I hit send actually accidentally, right? And all I'd written was, this is a really bad idea. So that got me a phone call really quickly. But the thing is, but basically someone was saying, hey, this is going to be happening. But then they added a couple more people internally to do that reality check. And that is a big function that myself, Sherry, I think Peter Kaminsky's been doing this for forever as well. Just sort of being that having that cultural awareness, that context, and being able to bring that to bear and say, okay, hey, I think let's re-examine what problem we're trying to solve. So let's isolate that. Now let's look at how we can go about doing this maybe a little bit differently. Because I think everyone out there knows that when we need to do things, that as a company we need to do things, we need to change things, we need to move things along, evolve with the times, etc. And as long as we're earnestly considering the community perspective, the business impact, and then also providing like the right messaging. That's been the challenge of Magento, and I'm sure lots of other organizations, but been a challenge for Magento for a long time. I mean, I felt it when I was on the other side of the door, and I, even these days, making sure that we're actually telling the right story, or telling the story at all, right? Even when we're doing good things, like we don't always talk about it. So that's for me, that's it should be understood. It's kind of, there's this selection bias, right? Because the stuff that blows up is, are the rare instances where we're being, tone deaf or not getting something or not talking about it. But there's a tremendous amount there are a tremendous number of things that happen that happen or don't happen that, they're handled well because we are paying attention and we do listen to this stuff. And there's not really a great way to promote that. Like, I after I got off the phone, I didn't just go to Twitter and say, hey, I just did my job. Someone, here's my Patreon, send me money. Yeah, we're the company, I think, does a pretty good job of listening. But when we don't, when you're not feeling respected or heard or something, it's absolutely something that we should we should be aware of.
Absolutely, and we've got Jamie Huskinson in the chat mentioning that balancing some positive with the negative required is not all doom and gloom, and that's exactly what I'm getting to. Like there is a lot to like about Magento. There's a lot to like about the potential of the Adobe acquisition. I just want to make sure. I feel like community-wise, at least tone-wise, on Twitter, and there's something I learn more and more every day. There's a very small percentage of the Magento community on Twitter, and at least active on Twitter. Yep. Twitter's a small platform in the general scheme of things. So if having those debates on Twitter is the right thing, then it's the right thing. I'm not saying it's not. We're just trying to have that conversation, right? Like, how can we be better? And if just continuing what we're doing on Twitter and calling out and publicly calling out on Twitter is the right thing, then by all means, let's continue to do that. But there's a lot of positive as well, and I feel like there's a tipping point at which, if we are negative in general, or a percentage of our conversations are negative, we're going to have a lot of people checking out, myself included. Like I got a lot of things to worry about. I got a house I'm selling. I got a 21-year-old son. I got small children. I got a life. I got I'm moving. I've got a business to run. I've got a lot of things to worry about. I'm sure you've got a lot of things to worry about. And the state of Magento it's on down my list of life priorities at this point. So, if that conversation continues to be negative, at least a certain percentage of it, then I'm going to check out of that conversation. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And so, is that the best place to do that? And then, and it's not so much the call out, but sometimes the negative tone of the conversation that follows, the panic, the sky's falling type of conversation. Yeah. So, that's my concern. And I'm not saying that I have the answer to that. I'm asking you for the answer. So if you're watching this in the chat, post the damn answer. Let me know. What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to make that better? Jarrett E. in the chat says, do you believe the outrage about changes and such are because of an overall feeling of being in the dark about the future of Magento with more clarity on the adjustments? The outrage might not rise. I completely and absolutely, wholeheartedly, 100% think that is exactly the problem. The problem with that, Jared, is that I think the future of Magento has not been determined. Adobe just got them. They may have some kind of thoughts as to where they want to go, but I think they need time to kind of flesh out exactly what that looks like before they share it with us. The thing that I think Magento has done in the past sometimes is overshare, especially overshare on things that maybe they couldn't deliver on, like the quarterly release schedule. We won't talk about that too much, Ben.
Which exists.
I'm sorry.
Now. Which it now exists.
It does. It exists now, but it didn't exist 2 years ago when they were going to try to do it, right? So maybe that
I was talking about it. Yeah,
yeah, that was a little bit of an overstep, and it'd have been better to set realistic expectations. We want realistic expectations. So if Adobe shares this lofty goal, then maybe those expectations are unrealistic. So I think us as a community, yes, we need that communication. We need some transparency from Adobe as to where they're going. And but we need to give them some time to make sure they themselves understand where they're going and how we can help, because we want to help. We're all here to help. Hell, I'm sitting here right now with a neon logo on a live stream on a Friday afternoon. We got a bunch of people communicating in the chat about Magento, the platform. We all want to help. We're here to help. We're talking about people contributing to the Bug Bounty Program. A huge percentage of the Magento code is written by the community. There are a lot of people that want to help Magento get to where they're going. And so we just need to be a little bit patient to let Adobe figure out where that is. And if we agree, then we help them. If we don't agree, then we figure something else out. So I definitely believe that the outrage and the negativity in general is because of uncertainty, and that certainty will clear that up, but that's going to take some time. Talesh, what are your thoughts? You agree with that or disagree?
I'm with you 100% on that. And just one little bit more insight, and it's nice that we have Ben here for this. A couple of weeks ago, Ben made a presentation, and the one slide that really stuck out to me was that Magento as a company, well, the Magento platform has enabled, was it $5 million in services? And this is not merchant sales. This is our economy. That's me, my business, TJ, you and your business. Most of the people who are being paid to work with Magento in this chat, that's a huge industry, and people's livelihood are tied to Magento. So that sort of investment will bring outrage, quick, and if financially tied to their livelihood. I think that was it.
Okay, you're done. Yep. You're done. I'm sorry. I've got 15 things going on. I'm reading the chat. I'm reading Twitter. This is a busy live stream. Sometimes you cut it a little bit short there at the end, and I'm just caught not really knowing what's going on.
I think my thought stream just crashed at the end there. So.
I understand, and there's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of chatter in the chat for YouTube. If you're watching on some other platform, get on over to YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Give us a thumbs up on this video. All of those things really help. Help us spread this on social media. You can find me, twitter.com/ecommerceaholic. Pretty much ecommerceaholic on any platform. We post regularly about these live streams. Help us get the word out. We need help. We're, hit the subscribe button. We're almost, we're getting up. I don't even know where we're at this point, but I want to say we were right around 700 subscribers or so. We need to get to 1,000. We get a different level of trust with YouTube, and we want to make sure that we continue to grow and spread the message, the gospel, according to Magento. Mark Lewis in the chat posts that criticism isn't necessarily or isn't inherently negative. Completely agree. I'm all for criticism. I want us as a community to be able to criticize Magento. Full stop. Want to be able to do that. I just want to make sure that Twitter is the best way of doing that, and especially in a scenario where people tend to pile on. Right? Like you have a fair criticism, and then you have 6 tweets that are not fair criticism. Like, I fully feel like what Karen Baker does when she criticizes Magento is full and fair criticism. Like, I almost always agree with what she's saying. And and that's saying something, because I don't always agree with what I'm saying. So, I almost always agree with the criticism of Magento on Twitter. I just don't necessarily like the doomsday sky is falling conversation that follows that. So my question is Twitter the best mechanism for that feedback? And it tends to get a reaction, and sometimes what you're looking for is the reaction of the community to help the groundswell of support for whatever your feedback is. And if that's the answer, then I'm fine with that. That's the answer. I'm okay. That's the answer. Let's do that then. Let's keep going down that path. I just question whether or not it's the right answer to do it in the open like that. And again, I'm completely open to the answer that is the best way. I think criticism is fair and that we should be doing it. So I don't want anybody to take anything I'm saying as we shouldn't criticize Magento. Hell no. We should criticize them to death if they're doing stuff that we don't think is in the best interest of Magento, because sometimes they don't necessarily see the consequences of decisions that are made. So I'm all for it. We just have to make sure we're doing it in a manner that is the most healthy for the platform as a whole. So I'm reading through the chat here, guys. We've been going for well over an hour and a half at this point. The conversation has been great. I don't want to quit. I got to go home and move. I don't really want to stop the live stream, but I know Ben and Talesh, they've got things to do. So if you've got any comments, I'm going to try to hold them here for another 10 minutes or so, but we're going to have to call it quits after that. So please post in the chat if there's any topic that you want us to touch on. Guys, I'm trying to catch up on the chat. It's rolling here. Anything in particular either of you guys want to touch on there?
Well, I mean, Karen's saying something about being right. I mean, it happens, a broken clock twice a day or something. No, yeah, it's I can generally address it's a salient point in there, which is basically I think that was Mark Lewis saying people criticize because they care. That is an essential thing to call out. If things got quiet, then I'd be concerned. I mean, the thing is, when people are disenfranchised or they're for whatever reason they go away. It's communities like ours. It's a heat death, right? If things aren't going well, people just start dissipating at the edge, and you don't always see that. It's something that we're that I think about all the time. Like, okay, who am I not hearing from? Like, who is not engaging like maybe like they used to? And it's not always easy to know, because some people are they're consuming this information, but they're not participating in the dialogue. And there were several questions in there about is Twitter the right platform for this? I mean, unfortunately, I don't think there is one proper platform for it. I mean, we have the Magento Association started up. We got some. I do have some good news there. Some announcements that'll be coming out soon, and that may Adobe polling the community. So we actually do have some surveys out right now. They're targeted, so they were targeted at specific people. But Adobe is in fact engaging with our community in order to understand, make some decisions about moving things forward. So this stuff is happening, and then beyond that, just absolutely given that there's so many different communication media, so many different ways to get in touch with Magento people, I tend to prefer conversations happen out in the open. So that's why I like forums like this one, or Twitter, where people can see these discussions. I want it that to me is just a natural fit with our open source, ethos and reality, that we would have these conversations in the open. And then knowing when conversations should go into a more restricted distribution in order to be productive or efficient. Wow. Okay. So I'm always open to suggestions about how to do that, but pending a solution that somehow ties Slack and Twitter and Reddit and all these other various fora together, I'll just keep engaging where I can. By the way, I also did want to point out, TJ, that I just got back from Meet Magento Poland here, and my wife got me. It's Zborowka, is bison grass vodka. I'm not drinking it because it's still a little early here, but But I wanted you to know that I had this next to me, just in keeping with the theme of the of the show.
See, I don't even know if you noticed in the chat, I actually swapped bottles a couple of times. So, I don't know if I'm going to be useful when it comes to this moving exercise I have to do here in a minute anyway. I don't know. I mean, this bottle's we're getting on down to the bottom. And I need to finish. I've got a lot of half-drank bottles up there on the fridge in the background. So it's time to, to kind of finish them out so I can buy something new anyway. We've got a question from Karen Baker. I don't really know what she's talking about here, but she said Ben will know. So, again, I'm sorry, Talesh, that you've been a bystander to this Ben Marks and me conversation. But this is Ben Marks' question. What do you think about muting handles? Would you recommend that as an employee of Adobe?
Well, if I don't like to give people agency that they don't deserve. So if I mean, there are a few people I've muted on Twitter. Actually, I don't know that any of them are in the Magento world. So I've just muted them for various reasons. I don't even know how I can see all the people I've muted. Anyway, if something about someone's engagement anywhere is frustrating for me, I mean, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to reach out and say, hey, could you can you change this behavior? I wanted you to know about this and this effect that it's having. I mean, they're under really no obligation to be responsible for my reactions, but maybe they just don't appreciate it. So I'll reach out. Or if it's, maybe I'm not super engaged with that person anyway. So I'd mute it just so I can continue to enjoy the platform. So I think, and then Matt, so Matt, I think that is coming from Matt saying, hey, in response to this whole dust up that happened, he said, hey, why don't the mute button is a thing, basically. So if someone is, you can not follow someone, you can block someone. I don't like to block people. That's just, that's not very open. But maybe for your sanity, or maybe for a little bit. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people who, like, if I start spinning up a bunch of tweets about an event that they're not attending, they're probably going to mute me. I'm probably muted by a lot of people because there's a lot of followers in there they're not in the Magento world. So yeah, just do what you need to do to continue to enjoy social media, if that's possible. So there's a lot of people that I don't that I've unfollowed and that I don't have in my stream on, like, Facebook and stuff, and it's become a much better place because I just get a little tired of hearing messages or seeing interaction I don't like.
Yeah, and I'll let Matt actually clarify what he meant by that. I think I know the tweet she's talking about at this point. I know Kaylin Jordan kind of took it as aimed at him when Matt said, and I'll read the tweet here, but this was in the thread about the Bug Bounty Program, which was a very active thread, and if you were in that thread, led to a lot of Twitter notifications if you happen to be getting notifications on that type of thing. Matt said, some days Twitter's mute button is more needed than others, but it's always needed. Life's too short to engage people perpetually slanting negative. And I know Kaylin took that personally. I think he thought that was directed at him. I thought immediately when I read it that he was talking about muting notifications so that, you could actually go get work done when there is a need, in that there's a lot of notifications on a thread. Rereading it, I could understand how maybe I was wrong in that initial assumption as to how that was intended. Obviously, if you don't like what someone's saying and you don't want to be a part of that conversation, or you don't want to be a part of the conversations that they are continuously having, then the mute button is or unfollow. I don't understand why. I mean, maybe other than they know that you've unfollowed them, but I get it. I don't necessarily think that's healthy for the Magento community. If you're muting critics, that's not a good thing, because we need that feedback mechanism that we have. Twitter is the feedback mechanism. For good or bad, we're having that debate. It is the feedback mechanism, and muting that mechanism is not a good idea unless they cross a particular line. And I think some things in that thread were unnecessarily negative, like sometimes they can be, but I also don't feel like they crossed any threshold to be blocked from the conversation. What are your thoughts there, Talesh?
Well, I'm assuming I don't think I was a part of this thread. Maybe I was muted. I don't know. But I believe for the problem with the community, if you're going to have a constant conversation, you're going to encounter people who really deserve to be muted for probably a couple of weeks, and back to just being. So that mute button is dangerous. Personally, I have a bunch of people muted. I don't have a professional obligation like Ben or Sherry to not unmute people, but I do have people muted because, in general, I'm not for the bit stuff positive or good stuff they have to say in between all the ranting and raving and crazy talk they have to put onto Twitter. That being said, if your job is to interact with the community, muting somebody for those few weeks, it's not a good idea.
Yeah, and I don't mute people on Twitter, but it's probably just because I suck at social media. It's probably why I only have 1,300 followers on Twitter. Maybe I should create some sort of graphic like this subscribe button, which you should be doing if you happen to be watching and not subscribed. But catch me over on Twitter at eCommerceaholic, which is very difficult to spell. I probably should just make it something simpler, but I don't use the mute button. I should probably, here's my problem with Twitter. This is what I want from Twitter. It's a completely changing conversation, and I shouldn't do this. This is really bad form when you're having a great conversation, but you know what? It's my show, and I've drank too much, so it's okay. And I want to be able to mute people's likes, but not their comments. Right? Like I've got some people that are really, really sane people when they actually post tweets, but they're insane in the crap that they like from other people. Twitter, work on that, get on that, figure that out for me. Then I'll use the like mute button. But maybe at some point in the future we can have Matt on. We can have that conversation. I reached out to him for this conversation. He was interested in being on today, but timing just didn't work out. So in the future, we'll figure that out. All right, so guys, I think we are about to call it quits. We're about to wrap it up. We've been going for about 2 hours at this point, which is more than I can ask. It's been great. I appreciate your generosity with your time. Talesh, I miss your beautiful face, man. When am I going to see you again? You going to be at Mage Titans? You're going to be at Meet Magento New York? When are we going to get together and have a beer?
I'm not going to make it to any Magento events for the rest of this year. It's probably going to be early next. I'm sorry.
That's not really what I wanted to hear, man. So lie to me at this point. Just tell me you're going to be at both of them. Go ahead, lie to me.
Yeah, I'll. You know what? I'm probably going to be in the United States in October. If I'm doing a road trip, I'll come to Alabama.
Hey, do that. Come down. Let me know when you're going to be here. As long as I'm here, let's go catch a football game or something. I'll show you what Alabama football, Auburn football, but the state of Alabama football is all about. Ben, what about yourself?
Just said to lie to you.
Yeah, I know. But still, I rolled with it. That's what I did. That's what we do as a host of a show. You just roll with whatever lies are told to you. Hey,
okay, cool.
We got to get on the same page here, Talesh. So, Ben, what does your schedule look like? You're flying out and you're headed somewhere, right? You just mentioned it. Are you going to be at Mage Titans? Are you going to be at Meet Magento New York? What does your schedule look like in the near future? You're on mute there. I can't hear you. You're not. I don't. Yeah. I'll just flip it back to me and I'll ramble. This is what it takes. If you want to be a live stream host, just be able to continue to talk for no reason. And then you hear that Ben's microphone kicked in because he's got a little background noise and that he's back. And then he's gone again. Must have not been his microphone. So it must have been Talesh's
that was my microphone.
Yeah.
I was going to ventriculize Ben. But I think he's headed to Sweden next. That's what he said, right?
Was it Sweden? I thought I was thinking Singapore. Yeah. I could be wrong.
No,
I don't know.
Singapore's over.
Did we lose Ben?
Is he back
completely?
Is he back?
I think we lost him completely. I don't know. There were a lot of events overseas. I wish we did more work overseas, or that we were just a much more profitable company. If you've got some Magento work you can send my way, please send it my way. Or maybe we just need to sell more sponsorships to the YouTube channel so I can go to more things, because the thing that JH put on there, I forget even what it was. Was it a Magento Live UK or a Meet Magento UK? I think it was. Okay.
Yeah.
That looked fantastic. I hate that I missed that. I really want to go. I'm trying very hard to go to that next year. The thing that they just did in Barcelona, that was Magento Live, right? That looked up. Is that still coming up? See, I can't even keep up with all of them. But people keep posting all of these things. Poland, Singapore.
Poland was off the hook. Yeah.
I don't want to hear it, man. You're just bragging at this point.
Dude, I only went to 3 events.
What are you doing in Prague, though? Like, what are you doing over there while we wait on Ben?
This is literally my 1-day vacation or 2 days vacation in Prague. I have like a couple days off. This is what I'm doing my vacation, TJ, just so you know.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes, there you are.
Okay, good. Wow. Okay, sorry. We've been on this damn talk so long, my AirPods died. Yeah, so I leave tomorrow. Let me see. Let me pull up the schedule here. The road show continues. So yeah, it's Sweden for Meet Magento Sweden. Meet Magento Poland was freaking awesome. What a great show that was. Lot to unpack there. But yeah, so Sweden tomorrow. Then I'm in Bangkok for industry events. I'm going to take a little extra time. I'm not going to be at the B2B forum in Chicago on the 25th, 26th. I'm actually going to just stay because I've got Singapore, PHPConf Asia. Going to be doing. Going to have to dust off my code editor and show people how to make a Magento module. And then Reacticon in Eindhoven, be at the Contribution Day in Munich, be at Barcelona. Not gonna be in Romania this year. I'm actually taking some vacation time as well. And then we've got Mage Titans and some other events coming up as well. And of course, Meet Magento New York. Meet Magento New York, and then Meet Magento Asia. Mage Titans, Meet Magento in Shenzhen, and yeah, I've got a whole bunch of other things. What's that?
Said Meet Magento Antarctica.
Man, there's a whole group of people who speak at events, and for years now we've been joking about doing a rapid fire 5-minute presentation kind of thing down in Antarctica, so we can see. I've presented on all 7 continents. I've only been to 6.
All right, guys, we're going to call it quits here. I definitely appreciate everyone watching. Your comments are fantastic. Again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Comment, like it if you're watching it on Facebook or any of the other platforms. All of that stuff helps. Again, we will see you. We're not going to have a live stream next week. I'm going to be closing on selling my house, which I'm really excited about. That'll be great. Free up a whole bunch of money to spend on all sorts of crazy stuff. So that's good news. But we will see you in a couple of weeks. Again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, thumbs up. I will be at Mage Titans next month. I'm going to be in Austin, Texas for a couple of weeks. So if you happen to be in Austin, hit me up. We'll get a beer or something. But again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Well, see, now I got to hit what? Okay, here's the end. I hit the wrong button.